Welcome to Deep Thought. Someone benefits from the misery. And look, it's one of the things we have to realize about a lot of the stuff out here. It doesn't have to be this way. You know, there's been numerous reports that people have found cures for cancer. Numerous reports that people have found cures for HIV. Numerous reports of different things. There's people who found, there's numerous reports of how everyone could really work in this society. I mean, the list goes on. But one of the things we got to think about is people benefit from the dysfunction in society. I'm going to give you a great example, the prison system. The prison system. Now, I remember seeing a report one time that in certain jurisdictions, one particular jurisdiction, they would calculate the number of beds that they needed in a prison, or how big the prison would be, by the number of black boys in kindergarten. So it was like there's already a plan, that whole school to prison pipeline. Somebody's benefiting from that, because especially in places like they have a private prison or something, you get some corporation. And then I remember I was reading about this small town that used a lot of prison labor, which is technically slave labor. The 13th Amendment allows for slavery for criminals. Look it up. So you're just like, wait a minute, somebody's benefited from it. And like this one small town, they had used so much prison labor, but the problem was the prison was starting to be emptied. People, and they were losing that labor or being transferred or something. And they were just like, wait a minute, that's affecting us. Somebody benefits from it. Or like this immigration argument, right? One of the problems I have with it is they could stop immigration tomorrow. Let me say that again. They could stop immigration tomorrow. They don't need to build a wall. Somebody hires these folks. In college, one of the classes I studied, it had to do with the U.S.-Mexican border. It was a seminar that I took. I mean, it was, people keep forgetting I do have some letters after my name. It was only 4 people in there. We all had to do a report. It's sad to say, I can't remember what I did a report on. I cannot remember, but I just remember giving a presentation and how I stood and everything. I can't remember what I gave it on. I could probably look it up if I really want to. But the thing is, one of the things we learned was that, people were crossing the border, but plenty of people, Mexicans, were crossing the border to work in the United States as domestics and other things. And then they would just go back home. They would sneak. They do all that stuff, to catch them and everything. And sometimes they would get caught, sent back. But a lot of times they weren't caught. They would come over. They wouldn't have any clothes. They didn't intend to stay. They just worked. So the question is, who benefited from that? Somebody was paying them. And many of these migrants, so-called illegal immigrants and stuff, they work in agriculture and stuff. They pick the fruit and everything. Somebody benefits. So, and those are just, some political examples people know, but people benefited from it. Like I said, there's been reports that there have been people, especially in the holistic health industry. And, it's kind of suspect that there were several people in the holistic doctors that have been killed over the years. Now, I can't speculate as to why. And I can't, because maybe it was something they all discovered that we don't know about. I don't know. But I'm just saying it's an objective fact that they died. Now, it's kind of suspect that, people in a particular profession or general profession die, but somebody benefit from, maybe they had some real cures to something. Because I'll use cancer for an example. Of course, it's a heinous disease. People would think you want to solve it, but how much money is made from benefits? How much money is made from, and when I say benefits, like, fundraisers, cancer societies, there's some people living very well. I was at a restaurant the other day, and there was somebody giving, trying to solicit donations for charitable donations. I never give any. Because even though I generally talk about my past, I did work one time on a case with a U.S. Attorney's Office dealing with a very well-known charitable organization where the person was driving was getting a lot of money. I'll put it like that. I ain't going to get into what they were driving. That might cross some lines as far as confidentiality, but they were getting paid. A lot of the heads of these charitable organizations get paid, but they were getting paid. So I was like, well, shoot, they ain't getting any money, but they were benefiting off of the charity. You get a lot of people making money for all these diseases, all the benefits for HIV and AIDS, all of this stuff. When you get these fundraisers, when you get people doing runs and stuff like that, somebody's getting money. A lot of people's getting money off of poor people. You know what? I used to have to go in and out of the DC courthouse way back in the day. I used to, and I thought about it one time, right? It was a very interesting dynamic. It was in the Washington DC area. You had these poor, and as one observer said, probably mentally ill black people who were basically paying the bills for some mostly white attorneys. I want to think about that. I mean, you're talking about some people like the law school graduates, longtime attorneys working for the court-appointed, they were court-appointed attorneys. I know because I used to work as an investigator for these same attorneys. And a lot of these attorneys did not deal with their clients except when they were standing in front of the judge, barely talked to them. You had a few who were good. You had a few who did some work. But for the majority, they barely knew them, everything, but they benefited off of them. They were benefiting off of the misery. You look at the courthouse, you look at the criminal justice system. You look at a lot of things, and it requires that some people are dysfunctional. You look at the family courts. Things like the family courts, the growing paternity fraud industry. Let me say that again. The growing paternity fraud industry, the child support industry. It's like, the thing with child support, just real quick, it's actually quicker. It's actually easier just if the parents can work it out someplace and they exchange money. The child support industry gets a cut. So you got some mostly fathers, though you do rarely have some women paying it, but you have mostly fathers, to get limited access to their kids, and then they not only paying the mother, but they paying some entity. Somebody's making money off of it. You go to the family courts, you just sit in any family court, go to any family court and just sit there. And I might just do that. I might find out where the family court is and just sit there where I live. I'm serious. I might just throw on a shirt and go in and just sit there, because you can sit in most of these courtrooms. Somebody's benefiting from it. You got a whole system, child protective services. They benefit from this. Like a lot of stuff, even with relationships, somebody's benefiting off of dysfunction. Because if you have functional relationships, say instead of, like in a black community, they say the out of wedlock rate is 72%, and it's climbing in other communities. What if instead of 72%, there was a total opposite? The out of wedlock rate was 28%. There are a lot of businesses that wouldn't exist now. A lot of attorneys be out of work. Everything with the family courts and stuff would be out of work. Shoot. Because some of them barely making work. Because, I hate to say it. I noted my ex-wife's divorce attorney had a cheap suit. So I was just like, okay. Yeah, you'd be in trouble if people could work it out. So it's like, You got to think about that. And I think that's a big problem that we have in society. A lot of people aren't really geared towards fixing stuff. Most doctors aren't geared towards actually getting their patients well. Because a lot of times, because a lot of them will be out of work. In fact, I read something about that. About that. Some doctor was telling his son or something, was getting into it, say, hey, you don't tell him stuff to get him well. You got to keep him coming back. The pharmaceutical industry. There are stuff that can really, to really heal a lot of the ailments out here, like high blood pressure, diabetes, things of that nature really require a lifestyle change. Like heart disease, high blood pressure, you could trace that to whatever life the person's living, especially if they're under a lot of stress. Because the real disease is stress. Yeah, I know, because I've had high blood pressure. I used to have a lot of headaches. All of a sudden, when I'm working for myself, it's rare I get a headache. Like, extremely rare. Like, it's like when I get one, it's usually from not sleeping because I was up the night before, and then I get up early. But I remember I used to just get headaches on a point. I used to keep some Advil on me. Now it's like, I think I've got the same bottle of Advil I haven't had to get a new one for, probably last time, June. Incidentally, that was the last time I had a day job. All right. So a lot of stuff could be fixed just with changing the lifestyle. But of course, we're not going to hear that. What we have is a bunch of people with medicine and stuff. They trying to shove some medicine down your throat. They trying to shove some medicine because Big Pharma, they don't make any money if people not taking medicine. Or I'm gonna tell you how another way they don't make money. If all of a sudden people start, if it was a widespread education. Because you have some herbal people out there. I mean, I know people right now. I can contact them right this second, who can tell you, they can take you out in the middle of some field or something, like buy some apartment building someplace and find everything they need to heal somebody. Shoot, I remember when I had a house a few years ago. We had some mint growing in the backyard, like a whole bunch of it. We used to put that in some teas. If people really learn that, all of a sudden they don't need pills for stuff. Shit, we even had wild strawberries too. There's a lot of stuff that, if people figured that out or change their lifestyle, a lot of people would lose money. Like these corporations, they need you to be sick. They need you to be, if you think about it on many levels, health-wise, they need you to keep taking the pills. Relationship-wise, you got a whole court system. You got a whole system on that. As much as I like Lauren Lake looking at her and stuff, she had to do something else. She's talented. She could handle it. Or Maury would have to go back to trying to straighten out bad kids. But then again, if the relationships were good rather than bad, he wouldn't have that to do. He had to actually do straight shows. That's another thing too, not just Maury. Maury's one of the cleaner ones of them. All these other shows where they get all these dysfunctional people on there would disappear. A whole lot would change. So there's always going to be a portion of the population that don't want things to change. They don't want things to change. Even though with what I do, there's a lot of people who want men and women not to, You got a whole relationship complex where people can make money just trying to get people together. If people were able to get together better, I'd be out of business in that, but I've said it 1,000 times. I want to be out of business in that one. It's to the point I'm trying to keep helping people, but I want to get to the point I don't have to be bothered with it. So, I'm still, that science fiction novel in my mind is coming together. There's going to be some drama in it. So anyway, right, I just wanted to share that. I'll talk to y'all later. Peace.